Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server one last time for the 2024-25 season. Let's get it. Welcome in, everyone. One last time, we're doing a puzzling players for this season. Somehow we made it here. It doesn't feel quite real yet. I don't think it's sunk in for me. Maybe it has for all of you. We've got some people in the comments already. Matt and Dynasty Dave saying hashtag 0G. Love that. Appreciate that. Matt's also got a question to get us kicked off. Hey, Nate, in the championship in a league where we go till the very last day of the regular season, need to max games played. Who would you drop if need be between Peterka, Timo, and Marchment? So off the top, obviously, we're going to look at the schedule. So Buffalo plays 6 games. They have one off night. New Jersey plays 5 games with 2 off nights, and then Dallas also plays 5 games with 2 off nights. So assuming you can get Peterka in for all 6 games, which isn't that big of a stretch in this particular group of games, the heaviest night is 11 games played, I think. So there's a pretty decent chance that you can get Peterka in on all 6 nights. That gets you 1 extra game played there. I use that to tiebreak a fair bit, but I think it is worth throwing all of these players in side by side in the sheet and just seeing where we're at in terms of recent production, deployment, because we are at that stage of the season where it doesn't really matter what we're seeing in the future. We need it to be happening right now. So obviously Marchment getting the least time on ice, just over 15 minutes, whereas Peterka and Meyer are both around 18, 15 in terms of average time on ice. Marchment and Peterka are the ones with the point scoring as of late. Both have 6 points in their last 5 games. The underlying numbers are best for Timo Meyer, 20th in shots per 60, 10th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Not bad for Marchment either, 93rd shots per 60, 36th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I mean, not bad for Peterka either, 104 shots per 60, 131 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. That's a really tough look, and I you have to believe it gets better for Timo Meyer at some point, but you're also in a spot right now where you need to win right now, and you kind of do want to default a little bit to the player who's playing the best at the current moment. And I think that's a legitimate thing to be thinking about in a week where everything's on the line, right? This is the last week where it matters. Buffalo this week plays Carolina, Columbus, Florida, and Tampa Bay. That is a bit of a tough road to hoe for sure. In their first 4 games at least of this week. New Jersey's going up against Boston, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders, which is not nearly as bad. And Dallas is getting their first few games in against Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Utah, which is a mid to tough schedule, I guess I would call it. Overall, I honestly think that I would just kind of default to Peterka here for the extra game played if you're getting it. If you're not, then I think I would go to Meyer. The underlying numbers are just so good there for him on an individual basis. How long can he actually only have a 33% IPP? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I think that I would go Peterka if you're getting the game. If you're not, then I'd go to Meyer. GB13 is in here as well. I'm loaded with right wing, so need to drop one. Would you rather have 5 games of Marchenko or 4 games of Wilson? Also, who would you want to replace them with out of Hyman, RNH, Harley, or Luke Hughes? This is going to depend a lot on your settings. Like if this is a Bangers Cats, then obviously Tom Wilson has way more value there than if it's just like a straight points league. So can you give me a little bit more context there on the league settings? If there's if it's a point setup, is there weight for bangers, strong weight for bangers, not so great amount of weight for hits, especially when it comes to Wilson, right? That is gonna make a big difference in what I would lead you on. So hit me in the comments with that one and we can deal with that. Classic Timo, says Matt. Thanks, Nate. Yeah. GB13 says it's standard points, but weights for hits, blocks, and shots. Okay. So back to 5 games of Marchenko versus 4 games of Wilson. Um, I think it's worth putting these guys in side by side. Marchenko has 4 goals, 5 points in his last 5, but they have been doing some different things with their lines, but also not the greatest results as of the last 2 games, getting shut out in the last 2 games. Marchenko actually has all 5 of these points in the first and second games of this 5-game stretch. He has no points in the last 3 and only 4 shots in that span. We compare and contrast that with Tom Wilson. Wilson getting 19.5 minutes, but the underlying metrics are not very good. Yeah, I think you're still taking Marchenko there. And if you are dropping one, I think it's Hyman that I want. 6 games played, 5 off nights for Edmonton over week 25 till the end of from now till the end of the season, basically. I think it's Hyman who you're going after, even understanding that he's cold once again and it's not looking as good as it has in the past. All right. Before I dig in too much with the list of players that was given to me by the Discord community. Obviously, the list is getting smaller and smaller as more and more people are either getting eliminated from their playoffs or not playing anymore, given that this is week 25. But yeah, before we get into that, I just want to take a moment. A couple of things came across my Twitter timeline today. Greg Millen passed away. Was a big part of a lot of broadcasts. I honestly don't know if I can remember a time when Greg Millen wasn't part of the broadcasting scene, and so he passed away today, it sounds like. And so, yeah, just thoughts and prayers going out to Greg Millen's family and everybody there. Obviously, a big part of that community, and a lot of names on Twitter. Sending condolences as well. So our condolences there as well. Did also see that Meredith Goudreau, Johnny Goudreau's wife, gave birth to Carter Michael Goudreau. So that's kind of obviously that's a source of great joy for Meredith and the Goudreau family, but also a bittersweet moment given what happened there. So we're also thinking of the Goudreaus and very happy to see that, but also a little bit of a bittersweet moment there. And I just wanted to, point that out here on the pod. To really, sometimes, with the advantage of hindsight at the end of a season, a long season, you start to romanticize hockey a little bit. You have the Ovechkin 895th goal happening, and then stuff like this kind of comes up today, punches you in the face a little bit. You step back and realize that, it is a community, even the fantasy community. We all feel like we have these ties to these players and their lives, and the broadcasters, the people that we listen to a lot. And either way, I two obviously huge members of the hockey community in various ways, and didn't feel right with going on tonight without at least acknowledging those 2 stories there. All right, let's dig in. We got to start with Jared McCann, Appleton Juno's favorite this year, now on a 3-goal, 6 assist, 9-point bender in the last 5 games. Still under 17 minutes average time on ice. 3rd in shots per 60, 66th individual scoring chances for per 60. Blake and I talked about McCann in the flagship show, so you can go back and check that out. But on a 21-goal, 62-point pace now. I'm kind of content to just ride with McCann for the next little bit. As we talked about, Seattle right here in this week, they go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday to start off the week, which is obviously really nice. They only play 5 games, 1 off night in total here. The off night is tonight, Monday the 7th. So after that, it's there's not much to it. They do play Saturday against the Blues. They are playing some tough opponents, so realistically, it's just like, when are you getting off the McCann train here, I think. And whenever you find a good streamer with a good rest of week schedule, whether it be after these 4 games that Seattle plays in the first 6 days here, or after the 3 games in 4 to start the week, after the 2 games back to back here, at some point probably you're going to be off of McCann and moving on. Looking beyond that, I am really interested to see what happens with the coaching there in Seattle. If Bilesma is back, then I don't know that I can realistically project McCann to do much better next year. It's pretty obvious to me from the underlying numbers that he's not a fit for what Bilesma is trying to get him to do here, and they are continuing to run these split power plays that are just soul crushing to fantasy players. And so, yeah, I don't think we have a huge reason for McCann to hit the ceiling that I do believe is there with the player, as long as Bilesma's in town. If Bilesma does get let go this year, which is a possibility given how badly the season has gone, then I'm obviously much more interested in McCann heading into next year. Carter Verhaeghe, 2 assists, 5 points in the last 5 games, 16 minutes average time on ice, 30th shots per 60, 24th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 40th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 143 in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Verhaeghe, this is a player that I think he's one of the players that is actually going to play for Florida down the stretch here. They have 5 games, 1 off night remaining as well. I think he is going to play because he hasn't gotten going really at any point in the season. And so I think Florida would like to have him on like a, I don't know, like a three game goal streak going into the playoffs, right? That's where they want Verhaeghe to be. So even as they're holding out guys like Forsling and guys like Reinhart and guys like Bennett in these games, I do think that Verhaeghe probably does stay in the lineup as long as he's cold like this. And the underlying numbers are still there with Verhaeghe. They have never gone away. On the season, Verhaeghe ranks 8th in the league in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 2nd in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 5th in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, he's doing it all for Florida except for scoring. Truly the unluckiest player in the NHL this year. He's got 5 more games. It would not shock me whatsoever if he popped off in these 5 games for 5 or 6 points. That would not be surprising to me in the slightest, even with Florida resting some players. Another request was basically just to go over Columbus. This was a general kind of request in the Discord here, so I can definitely do that here, just kind of talk through the team and what we're seeing. Obviously, getting shut out in back-to-back games, not a good look. The comment was that regression seems to have hit them hard recently, and that's definitely true. That being said, like, you still have Werenski here with 4 assists in the last 5, 25 minutes a night still, 1st in shots per 60, 12th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 4th in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 13th in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. He's still doing all the things that he's been doing all year. It's not that he's fallen off in terms of his play at all, in terms of his offensive play at least. I'm not trying to make any allocations to what he's done on the defensive end necessarily, but the offensive stuff is still there. It's just not going in the net for Columbus as a whole right now. I mentioned Marchenko has 5 points, but those 5 points came in games 1 and 2 of this 5-game stretch, and nothing in the 3 games since. The underlying numbers are good on the on-ice side, not as good in the individual side, and definitely not in the last few games. Fantilli, 16.5 minutes, 97 shots per 60, 184 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. You got Boone Jenner, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 18 plus minutes, 73rd shots per 60, 38th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. You got Kent Johnson, 4 assists, 17.5 minutes average time on ice, 375 shots per 60. Brutal stuff there. 245th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, but the on-ice stuff looks really good. 18th in Corsi, 4 per 60, and 41st in scoring chances, 4 per 60. And then, yeah, I should throw Sean Monahan in here as well. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in the last 5, 17.5 minutes average time on ice. 4th in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60, and 38th in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, but in the 100s in the individual numbers. So all that to say, well, I should mention too that they changed around the line. So it was Boone Jenner, Sean Monahan, Kent Johnson, and then Voronkov, Marchenko, Fantilli. So they kind of split the lines up, or I guess kind of just swapped centers on those top 2 lines there. It is very clearly top 2 lines now, which is good, but they are splitting this time up a little bit more. That's obviously not going to be as good for the average time on ice for these players. it basically before when Monahan was out there, Fantilli was getting like the 20-minute treatment. So was Marchenko. So was Voronkov. That's not there anymore. They are kind of splitting the top six, and that's just taking the top off of what they individually can do. Theoretically, it shouldn't matter that much for the team's potential to score points, but it is affecting each of these players individually for fantasy in that way. So I think that's a real problem for fantasy that you have to evaluate moving forward. That being said, like I still think this team will score some goals throughout the rest of the year here. I don't think they're done by any stretch. 6 games left. They have one off night left this week. Who does Columbus play this week? They got Ottawa, Buffalo, and then a back-to-back home and home against Washington in the first 4 games here. And yeah, those are teams that they should be able to score on. They're obviously going to be motivated. They still have a shot at the playoffs here. I would love to see that storyline come true for them, but they are going to have to start putting some W's on the board in a hurry if they're going to do that. So yeah, they have a lot of motivation. I like the players. It's week 25, right? I like players that have something to play for at this point, that the team has something to play for. So that part does make me feel a little bit better about them. But yeah, the fact that they're splitting the top 2 lines, you're not getting anybody with the 20-minute treatment the way that the guys like Marchenko and Fantilli were when they were really popping off, Monahan when he was really popping off, Voronkov, etc. So that's the part there that I'm not super excited about. I do think Werenski's totally fine. But yeah, there are probably some leagues out there where there might be a better option than some of these secondary players. Like even a Kent Johnson, the underlying numbers look good. He's on the top power play, but he doesn't shoot. And so if he's not getting an assist, is he really doing that much for you? And that's a real conversation that you're going to have with yourself about the players this week. So it is going to be a lot more dependent moving forward what you're going to do with these players. That being said, like Marchenko and Werenski to me are players that I'm not interested in moving off of. Boone Jenner in any kind of bangers heavy format, cats or points with heavy bangers weight. I don't think you're moving off Jenner anytime soon. But the other players are starting to fall into bubble-ish territory. If you are getting all 6 games from them, probably you're hanging on to most of your Columbus players just because you don't need to waste moves hoping to get something better from somebody else unless you're in a very shallow league. So hopefully that helps you wherever you're at in your particular setup, but this is what I would say about Columbus at this time. All right, we got some questions, some comments, and I want to get back into that on YouTube here. Pucks and Grooves, thanks for all the content, Nate. You helped so much. Unfortunately, now officially lost all my leagues in semis and quarters. Combined 36-7 across 2 leagues, only to get bounced right away. Not even that your teams do bad sometimes, but my opponent's team did so well. Seems every year my teams run out of gas in the playoff weeks when they do great all season. Yeah, I feel that. I feel somewhat similarly about a couple of my teams this year, that it does feel like they kind of ran out of gas just a little bit at the end. But there's always something to take away from that too. So do it. I'm going to suggest you do what I do. And I'm going to be looking back, especially at my playoff weeks, and think about what I was thinking about during that time frame. And if there was something else that I should have been thinking about that I wasn't, what I could have done differently. It's not so much about just like picking the right guys, the right streamers or something. I think we have a process that we talk about here on Apples and Geos a lot. And, we translate that pretty well to the listener, I feel like. And so I think everybody's on the same players that we are for the most part. It's really just, is there something else a little bit more systemically about how I'm looking at it, about how I'm treating my in-week management? Am I being too aggressive, trying to set something up that's not there? Am I letting go somebody who's actually a better player to try to squeeze out an extra game played somewhere? These are the kinds of things that I'm going to be looking at a little bit more in detail over the next couple of weeks to see if I can get better at playing those one-week matchups in the playoffs. Jordan says, hey Nate, a few questions. In your Patreon Cats League, I'm curious as to why you only have wins, saves, save percentage, as goalie categories don't have stats like goals against average, or games started. Also, compared to a points league, how does your draft strategy change in a Cats League, especially with 0G? Okay, so we'll start with the first question. I have gone with wins, saves, and save percentage because I want to keep the goalie categories down in number relative to the skater categories. I have 6 skater categories and 3 goalie categories. Even that I feel is probably too much weight on goaltenders. I'm considering adding another skater category or subtracting potentially a goalie category for that reason. And then the other reason I have it this way is I prefer in category leagues to have a little bit more weight on the volume side of things because it's a little bit more predictable. So wins and saves are a little bit more predictable to me than goals against average and save percentage, especially in 1 week scenarios where you're winning your week based on goaltenders, goals against average, and save percentage for that singular week. I do think you should be rewarded for how well your goaltenders play, so that's why save percentage stays in there. But also for the sport that we're playing here, or the hobby that we have here of fantasy hockey, I like stats that are a little bit more predictable, like wins, like save percentage. I just think it lends itself more to manager skill. And so that's why I go that route. Same reason that I don't include things like game winning goals or shorthanded points or things like that on the skater side is because those in particular are like super rare events. And so one can actually win you your week. And that's not of interest to me whatsoever. I don't want, random events basically causing me to get a win in a category or lose a win in a category for those. So yeah, draft strategy, 0G wise in a cats league versus a points league. Most points leagues, as you mentioned, would have like goals against average, and so they're a little bit more tilted towards rate stats. So goals against average and save percentage. And so in a cats league, I'm much more inclined, if they have that kind of additional weight, if you will, on rate stats, goals against average and save percentage. I'm much more inclined to roster goaltenders that are in a tandem, but are on strong teams. Anthony Stolarz on Toronto this year is a prime example of something like that. The Carolina goalies have been prime examples of that for years at this point. Much more inclined to take a bit of a hit on the volume to get those prospective goals against average and save percentage numbers from goaltenders that are on good teams, on good defensive teams, that I feel pretty confident will actually help me in those categories. So that's a little bit where I change who I'm targeting. I don't really change, I'm not drafting goaltenders higher in a cats league just because of that, but I am changing the type of player that I'm targeting, right? Like you could have drafted Stolarz or Joseph Wall, either one, very late in your drafts this year, well within 0G range. And that's more of the archetype of player within a split tandem situation that I'm definitely willing to take in a category setup versus a points setup, where in a points setup I'm much more inclined to just try to grab a volume starter, even if it's on in a worse defensive situation or a worse team overall. SK93, hey Nate, no questions, just want to thank you for all your hard work, brother. It's great help this season, appreciate that. Hopefully it was helpful and you brought some championships home for yourself. Boxing Grooves, how did you feel overall about Panarin's season? Was it a letdown season, or did he just set the bar so high last year that maybe it was unrealistic to think it would be obtainable again? Yeah, let's throw Artemi Panarin in here. I don't know if he got in on this goal here tonight. The Rangers are losing to the Lightning as we speak, partway through the second period here. He did get an assist here on the power play. He does have 7 points in his last 5. The underlying numbers are looking really good, actually. He's on a 91 point pace, 38 goal pace, 11.2% shooting percentage. The IPP is still sky high the way that Panarin always has it. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more on the players around him than himself personally. We all know the fall-offs that have come from Kreider, Zibanejad, Trocheck to an extent this year. I think it is more on the players around him. He's still, as you can see by the IPP, still heavily involved in everything that's going on there, but the teammates are not converting at the same rate. Yeah, I think that's most of what's going on here. I still think Panarin is largely the same player, but it is worth noting that, yeah, this is a scenario that can happen for a player like Panarin. And so maybe that when you're evaluating him versus, the upper echelon of players, the first round players, maybe Panarin is more of that second round player because of those that propensity to, have a great season and maybe have a 90-ish point season and not quite return value on that first round pick if that's where you spent one this year. So I think Panarin falls slightly back of that elite tier for me. And I think my projections, I did have a solid projection on him. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I could look that up. But even still, he also doesn't provide a lot of peripherals. He's not a huge, he doesn't hit really at all. He doesn't do a lot of those other things that can kind of supplement even when he's not scoring actual points. Is he giving you the other stuff? Yeah. So I had him on a 39 goal pace. He's on a 38 goal pace right now, but I had him for 74 assists, where he's only gonna end up probably what is that? A 53 assist pace. So yeah, I think that's what you're seeing is it's just a lot less finishing from his teammates there. And that could be partially on him, but I think it's mostly on the teammates. But also, do we really think that gets a lot better next year? I don't know. And so that's the question you're going to have to answer for yourself. Yeah, does that get a lot better next year? I think the Rangers have just had a terrible season, so I do think there is some rebound. I think Panarin can be a 100-ish point player once again if the team gets a coach in there that they can work with and feel good about. But yeah, I think it's a spot where they need to recapture some of that magic they had last year. They need Trocheck going again. They need Lafreniere going again. That Trocheck, Lafreniere, Panarin line was so good last year, and this year it's been broken up, and they've tried everything else. Yeah, for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked this year. He says, wanted to shout you out, Nate. Won my Points League championship yesterday. Hey, congrats. Appreciate you and Blake for all the content and advice throughout the year. Back to back for me. Proud of the squad. Side note, Tage came to play both years for me. Traded for him this year and last. He's a playoff beast. Ordering a jersey now. That's awesome. Love to hear it. Love to hear your triumphs in a year where I didn't win any championships myself. It does warm my cold dead heart to hear about the Apples and Ginos listeners who have gotten some. Rob says, thank you, Apples and Ginos, Nate and Blake, for all the advice. Draft prep, amazing content. On pace to win my season-long four-keeper points league by 200 plus points. Wow. Congrats, 12-team points league. Wow, that's great stuff. Keep after it. Don't take your foot off the gas just yet, but get it done. Gomer Jackson, appreciate you, Nate. Great work through and through. Oh, yeah, and Creamer, too. All right, thanks for that. Bucks and Grooves, do you have a set/average round you usually tend to draft your first goalie? Hashtag 0G. No, I think it's the wrong way to look at it, to be honest with you. Like I've constantly said that I'm just trying to not spend picks on goaltenders where I think there's still a lot of value in players, and we constantly see players of value come from those later rounds. Just thinking about like the Gabe Vilardis, the Kirill Marchenkos that emerged from those later rounds this year and could have really helped you out. Whereas you could have picked up Mackenzie Blackwood off of waivers probably on the day that he was traded to Colorado this year and had a number one netminder rest of season just by doing that. In Cacupful Tier 1 16-team league, I had Mackenzie Blackwood and Joey Decord as my goaltenders this year, and I didn't draft either of them, right? So that's like, if I can do it in a 16-team league against Tier 1 competition, basically all diamond level players on Yahoo for whatever that's worth, then I think you can do it in your home leagues, in your Yahoo, standard leagues, wherever you're playing. It is possible if you're willing to grind for it. So that's why I'm just continually fading goaltenders as long as I think there's appropriate value in players. And that's really the trade-off I'm trying to make mentally all the time. It's not so much about where you draft your first goaltender. It's about what am I giving up to draft a goaltender here when I know that I will be able to get goaltenders off the waiver wire throughout the season. Matt just wanted to toss out that the team-by-team breakdowns this summer were great. Helped me target Werenski in my keeper league, and he's been a top 10 overall player all year. Yeah, that was one of the biggest labors of love that Blake and I put out in the off season, but we did think it was really important content. We got really deep in the weeds on basically all of the fantasy relevant players at the start of the season. Obviously more emerged throughout the season, but we did get deep on the teams and try to provide, those floor and ceiling scenarios for each of those players so you can kind of see what could go right, how a player could be a big hit, and obviously Werenski has been an Apples and Ginos favorite for years now. CG, do you believe in drafting based on playoff schedule? Uh, Pretty much no. That being said, I will look at it for my elite players. Um, yeah, if you're in a spot where you're looking at your draft and you're deciding between two players that are pretty similar, and you realize that one of them has a truly terrible, like a two game a 2 game week in your quarterfinals and a 3 game week with no off nights in your semifinals, then yeah, that's something that you might actually want to consider. But unless it's like truly terrible, I tend to not make my decisions based on playoff schedule. In the mid to late rounds, like there's a pretty good chance you're dropping those players at some point anyway. If even if not, like they're not the core pieces of your team necessarily. But at the top end, the absolute top end, yeah, you can let that enter your decision making. I typically haven't, because typically I have a lot more other factors that I'm weighing that I weigh more than playoff schedule. You have to make it to the playoffs for that playoff schedule to matter, and so I'm usually much more concerned in actually getting there, and then I'll figure it out once I get there. Is kind of been my attitude. It's served me pretty well so far, but yeah, I have, this past year I drafted Kaprizov in a lot of spots. I drafted Boldy. Obviously, Minnesota, great playoff schedule, but that was not like part of the calculus for me in drafting those players, I will say. Frank says, Nate and Blake, appreciate you guys bringing some value, helping me get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today and all season. That's awesome. I'm running away with the title in my Dauber League, currently first with a 21-point lead. Had to gloat a little bit. Love that. Keep it going. Bring it home, Frank. Love to hear it. Chris Hollywood, do you think the Ducks have a chance of being a fringe playoff team in the next couple of years? I really do. I really like the depth on the Ducks, to be quite honest with you. Obviously, it's a lot of young players right now, and so that's sometimes tricky to get a whole bunch of young players all pointing in the same direction at the same time. But if you look at the young core here with Terry, McTavish, Gauthier, Carlson, Zegras, like there's a lot of elements here that a lot of teams would love to have on their squad. Then you go to the back end, you have Lacombe emerging as a star this year. You have Zellweger and his offensive upside. You have Minchikov. He's been kind of he's been kind of what's a kind way to put this? He's been put through the ringer by Greg Cronin there, one of the premier experiencers of the Greg Cronin hellscape in Anaheim this year is Pavel Minchikov. But they also have Gudas, they have Truba. These guys are maybe not like difference makers necessarily, but they're like very solid NHL defensemen that other teams are not going to want to play against. And so you have what I would say are five very strong NHL defensemen right there. That's a good enough unit in my mind on the back end, and then you can fill in 6, 7 defensemen around those players on the back end. They have Lucas Dostal in goal, who by all metrics is one of the bright up and coming netminders in the entire league. And so I really do think that the Ducks have a lot going for them. The one thing I'm not sure that they have on the roster right now is like that elite first line player who can really carry things offensively. Carlson was the highest draft pick they had. McTavish has had a great end to the season. Maybe he's trending up into that range. Maybe, he doesn't have like the 100-point potential, but maybe he's in a little bit of like a Nico Hischier mold and he can be somebody like that. So yeah, I think they are maybe still one like big time scoring piece away from really contending. But with the right coach in there, I could definitely see the Anaheim Ducks being next year's Columbus Blue Jackets. That would not surprise me in the slightest with the right coach in the mix. Can we get Columbus moved on to the next coach and get Dean Evison over here? Can we do that? I'm just kidding, but something like that would give me a lot of hope for the Ducks for sure. And I do think that they can push for playoff contention as soon as next year if everything were to break right. Like you look at even this year, I think they're like 22nd in the league in the standings right now. And now I've got to look it up. Now I've started talking about it. I absolutely have to look it up. If I go by league, sort by points, maybe we should sort by points percentage to make it a little bit more even. Anaheim Ducks are 25th in points percentage right now. They're above the Penguins, Kraken, Flyers, Bruins, Predators, Blackhawks, Sharks. They're above all those teams. They're not that far behind where even Columbus is right now. The Islanders, the Red Wings, the Rangers are not that far ahead of where the Ducks are right now. Realistically, like the Ducks are within 5 points of the Rangers right now. So yeah, I do think it's pretty reasonable to think that a new coach in there, another step next year for some of their young players. I do think that's reasonable to think that they could be a fringe playoff team. TBRADINC. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the content. I can proudly say I've won my main league for the third time in 4 years. Awesome. Congrats. Now time to decide who to keep out of Werenski, Tage, Barkov. Opinions. Wow. That is tough decisions for sure. I think Werenski will be the player who goes highest in the drafts out of any of those next year. Then I think I would take Tage. I think just the goal scoring of Tage is such a rare ability. I think he scores 50 next year. You can put me down for that right now. And then Barkov. Barkov this year went even further into a playmaking role, deferred even more, and it didn't necessarily work that well. I want Barkov to shoot the puck more, and he has done it in the past. Barkov is annoyingly one of those players who can kind of change his game to just kind of fit whatever he thinks is going to work for the team. When he needs to be the shooter, he can be. When he doesn't need to be, he will defer. Seems like in this current iteration of the Panthers, he's a bit more of the latter. And so that's a problem for fantasy, just for shots and goals. So I think I would go Werenski, greater sign Tage, or greater sign Barkov currently. Pucks and Grooves, are all your leagues officially over? Are you playing for any third place placements? Hope you are able to at least get something. Yeah, all my leagues are over now. 2 third places and 2 fifth places is where I ended up. Posted on Twitter, on X, and Blue Sky earlier today, kind of breaking down those leagues just a little bit. And there will be a podcast/YouTube video coming out in probably a couple of weeks from now where I'm going to deep dive into all my leagues and how I did in each of them and what I think I could have done better, what I did well, all that. Jordan, in a Cats league, does your strategy for drafting skaters change compared to a points league? Are skaters that cover a greater spread of Cats higher priority in your draft? Yeah, absolutely. For sure, you'll see guys like Svechnikov, like Tom Wilson, go much higher in a Cats league for their category coverage, and that absolutely makes sense. Those players that can cover categories really just provide you with a great baseline across categories that you can build on. You can find. We talk about being really easy to stream hits, to stream blocks, to find those players who can do that for you. That is true, but you can also often in these categories leagues also stream points. Like you can stream Nick Schmaltz, you can stream Troy Terry, you can stream these players who will score points and score power play points and do that for you in these categories leagues because no one wants those guys who don't hit whatsoever. And so if you have a good baseline on your team with the Wilson, with the Svechnikov, with Frank Vetrano is a good example this year once again. Not a guy who killed it in any particular category, but was very strong across categories, good shot production, good hit production, solid in goals, decent amount of assists. These kinds of players have a lot more value in category leagues for that reason. G Horn won my 16-person league season and playoffs. Rarely missed an episode. Appreciate all you and Stream Crossing buddy do. Thanks for everything. Let's go. Thanks again. I appreciate that, G Horn. Love to hear it. I love to hear when these listeners and watchers are winning stuff. That brings a smile to my face. CG Kemper League winner this year. Props to Blake on that call for sure. That was a big one for sure. Kevin Woodley was saying that too when he was on that pod with Blake. That was definitely a huge one. P.S. If Ovi gets an 8.99, he should retire. How fitting would that be? 8 and 99. That is a great look, actually. I never thought about that, but that would be pretty hilarious. I don't think Ovechkin's done yet, but that would be pretty spectacular. Pucks and Grooves, who won the Creators League this year? I love watching the draft you live stream for that league. Seems super competitive between all the fantasy hockey creators. Yeah, the Creators League, Josh, actually, from Apples and Ginos. He hasn't put out any content really this year, but you go back to the offseason, he was. Yeah, just for personal reasons, he's kind of left the channel, but he was still in the league, and he brought it home this year, so that's fantastic. Keeping it in the Apples and Ginos family this year. That was one of the leagues I finished third in, so first and third for Apples and Ginos. Book it down. Yeah, it was a fun league. Again, I think it's honestly the least competitive of the four leagues that I'm in personally, but it's a fun league for sure. I appreciate the Fantasy Puck guys for putting that one together every year. All right, we got to get back to the list and get through it. Where did I leave off? I think I left off right around here. Macklin Celebrini. So San Jose has a great schedule here, which is one of the reasons to be in on the San Jose players, 6 games, 5 off nights. But obviously, San Jose doesn't have a lot to play for here. In fact, you could argue they have a lot to lose for here with another potential top pick looming. They are currently 32nd in the NHL in points percentage. So, yeah, there's that. But second, 2 assists, rather, 2 points in the last 5 games. Over 20 minutes, average time on ice, 91st shots per 60, 46th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 155 Corsi, 4 per 60, 86 in scoring chances, 4 per 60. Celebrini now on a 27 goal, 70-point pace on the season. On the season, 13th in shots per 60, 16th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. The man is elite. What can I say? Yeah, really special player I would be happy to roster for the rest of the season. Underlying numbers have dipped slightly, but definitely nowhere past the point where I wouldn't be happy to roster him for all 6 games this upcoming week 25. Dylan Larkin also just 2 assists in his last 5, 22 and a half minutes average time on ice there, but 296 shots per 60, 151 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 225 in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, and 78th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. It's kind of been that weird. It's been a weird season. I think we can confidently say that for Dylan Larkin. He has had some hot stretches, but also some not so hot stretches. And it is a bit tough to really dissect what's going on there. The shots per 60 is down this year. The scoring chances are down this year relative to years prior. The on ice stuff is still looking pretty solid. The on ice shooting percentage still pretty solid. His personal involvement, the IPP, is a little bit down. Previous years 70%, 69%, nice 65%, and then this year 60%. So ticking down there, his individual shooting percentage has ticked down as well. So I think he's getting a little bit unlucky in that regard. And yeah, the shots being down as of late are obviously not a good sign. On the season, still pretty solid, 60th in shots per 60 amongst all forwards on the season. But yeah, I think it is a bit of a situation where he's getting a bit unlucky. There maybe we'll get some word that there is some little underlying injury nagging at him here, and that's why he's not shooting quite as much. But overall, I think Larkin is a player. Again, the Detroit Red Wings have 6 games, 4 off nights this week. You're not doing anything about the fact that Larkin's not producing, but it is concerning, you have to say, that he's not doing much of it recently, and the shots are not there either at the moment. Valery Nichushkin, just 1 assist in the last 5 games, but over 21 minutes average time on ice, 28th shots per 60, 31st individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 20th, Corsi 4 per 60, 24th, and on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Yeah, that's a bit of a divergence between the point line and the underlying numbers. Underlying numbers looking terrific, and the points just not being there. I do think they come back for Nichushkin. Blake and I talked about Nichushkin and Lehkonen on the flagship show as well. Colorado plays 4 games this week, and then they're done, like before next week even gets started. So that's kind of an interesting schedule. I think that Nichushkin should have a really solid week this week, and I would hold on to him for the rest of the week and then hopefully flip into a Detroit or LA player for 3 games in the last 4 days of the season. Brad Marchand has 0 points in 5 games, 17 and a half minutes average time on ice, 303 shots per 60, 327 individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 35th in on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, and 140 in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. It hasn't exactly been a smooth transition over to the Florida Panthers for Brad Marchand. Last game, he was playing with Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell at even strength. Yeah, I mean, that's not ideal. The power play was Marchand, Rodriguez, Lundell, Simiskevich with Seth Jones on the back end. Also not ideal. Yeah, just a tough look overall. And I think it might be a situation where Marchand isn't that great for fantasy for the last little bit here. I think they are going to play him because, yeah, he's obviously not quite up to speed with Florida's game plan here, maybe the different system that they would run. You have to remember, like, Brad Marchand has literally never been in a different place, in a different uniform, in a different system. I mean, he's had different coaches, but not gone mid-season to a new place and had to learn things a little bit from scratch there. So that is different. Like, say what you will, that is very different for a player like Brad Marchand, who's very well established in the league where he was. So I can't say I'm excited about it. The underlying numbers are not good. Florida is sitting players, and Marchand is not doing the thing himself individually. And so I think you can do worse than hanging on to a guy like Brad Marchand. Florida plays 5 games, 1 off night in week 25. But I also think that if there's somebody better out there, Marchand is a player that I would consider dropping at this point, just because the underlying numbers are so bad and he's not getting primo players to play with at the moment. Vincent Trocheck, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points in his last 5, 21 plus minutes average time on ice. He has not factored into the scoring here tonight for the Rangers. The single goal they did score was Zibanejad from Miller and Panarin so far. 194 shots per 60, 122 individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 16th in Corsi 4 per 60, and 11th in on-ice scoring chances 4 per 60. So that's there for Trocheck. It's just a 24-goal, 56-point pace on the season for Trocheck. Is averaging over 21 minutes on the season, but the IPP is down at 54%, 11.9% shooting percentage. Felt like last year he had the chemistry with Panarin, and then this year somehow that they just haven't been able to replicate it. Same coach, like it's pretty hard to figure out what's going on there. In this game, he is playing with Panarin and Lafreniere. They've reunited that line. The power play is Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck, Panarin, so he's up there as well. As long as he's in those spots, it's going to be hard for me to get off of Vincent Trocheck for this week, especially Rangers play 6 games, 4 off nights. That's going to be tough to get away from at any point in week 25 here. So I think you are rolling with Trocheck, especially in any kind of banger situation. Trocheck does that. He will provide those hits for you. So that's going to double up on what Trocheck can provide you. Mason Marchment, next up, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in the last 5 games, 15 minutes average time on ice, 93rd shots per 60, 36th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, but 271 Corsi 4 per 60, 205 in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Marchment is just another one of the cogs in the wheel of the machine that is the Dallas Stars top 9. And he will put up points like this from time to time, and then he will go cold again. For the upcoming week, I think it's a spot where you don't feel like you have to get off of Marchment, but you also feel like there could be somebody else out there who might be better. Some of these San Jose players would be players that I would consider rostering over Marchment for this week with all those off nights, with the deployment that they're getting relative to Marchment. I'm not like sold that Marchment is going to keep up a point per game pace through the last bit of the season here. I don't think anybody should be, but he is playing well at the moment, and you don't have to get off him just because he's only getting 15 minutes a night for sure. Olen Zellweger, Jackson Lacombe, Pavel Mintyukov. Basically, the Anaheim D situation was referenced here. What can we learn from it? Zellweger has 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points in the last 5 games. Lacombe, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points in the last 5 games. And Mintyukov has only played 4 of the last 5 and has a couple of assists in there. Obviously, Lacombe playing the most minutes here, almost 25 minutes a night. That's obviously terrific stuff. Lacombe and Zellweger are running the 2 units. They have gone back to a little bit more of a split power play situation. Zegras, McTavish, Colangelo, Carlson on one, Strome, Killorn, Vetrano, Terry on the other. And so they're splitting time a bit there. Zellweger's a touch under 19 minutes average time on ice, but 4th in shots per 60 amongst all defensemen, 20th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 35th Corsi 4 per 60, 20th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Lacombe's shots have fallen off a bit, 134th shots per 60, 94th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 26th Corsi 4 per 60, 15th in on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. So yeah, I really like what we're getting out of Zellweger. I still think this guy is a very, very talented player. Will probably have some 50-point seasons in the NHL, even if he's not getting top power play all the time. I do wonder if this ends up being a situation where Lacombe is more of the even strength guy and Zellweger is more of the power play specialist. That is within the realm of possibility here. At this moment in time, both of them are getting kind of equal power play time, but obviously Lacombe getting more even strength time. So I would take Lacombe rest of season for sure, but I do like what Zellweger is bringing, and I do think he's a very legitimate option as a pickup right now. 6 games left for Anaheim, 3 off nights. Don't mind that whatsoever. Back to the comments. Pucks and Grooves picked up Toffoli on waivers this morning only to get the injury notification 2 hours later. A bit of a waste of an ad. The fantasy gods have not been kind. Yeah. That was me going back in the, I was in Kikuffle in the week that I got eliminated. I had Gabe Vilardi. I had the buy, and Gabe Vilardi was deemed week to week on the Monday after I could have been using ads to replace his production a little bit better. Didn't get that opportunity because of him going out on the Monday, and so ended up not getting to use that ad there. So I feel your pain there. Jordan Ducks also have Beckett Seneke. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that name. If he can develop well, yeah, they do have him. I don't know how I feel, quite honestly, about Seneke. I'm going to go with Seneke. It feels wrong to say. Somebody correct me if they know for sure, but I'm not sure how I feel about him as a prospect just yet. I think there's definitely some development still there. Obviously, playing in the OHL this year, playing on a supercharged Oshawa team there. But yeah, it is a player that has a high upside, I would say. But whether he can put it all together at the next level is definitely still up for debate and something we'll be looking for sure. Byron Bader's model has some decent stuff here, but not super high star potentials for whatever that's worth to you. Hockey prospecting is not super in love with the player as a prospect, so that's just one data point. But I'm not convinced that Seneke is going to be the upper tier scorer that the Ducks really need. Love it if he could be, but maybe not. Pucks and Grooves, is Zib worth the pickup for this week? I think so, relatively speaking, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to win you your week, but can he provide something for your team this week in a week where the Rangers actually have a pretty good schedule? I think he can. The underlying numbers are not good. They haven't been all year, but he is still on the top power play. He's still getting 18 plus minutes. That part is all still there. So, yeah, I'm not excited about it. There might be other players that I'm more interested in. Like, for example, if we're just going to compare 1-to-1, would I take Mika Zibanejad or William Eklund? Like, that's a real conversation to me, whereas I don't think anyone would have put those two players in the same conversation before the season. So yeah, that's a little bit of where I'm at. I just think that we have to readjust our expectation here and think about him more as a streamer now than anything else. Jordan says, can you also cover Stützle if he isn't on the list? I absolutely can. We did talk about Stützle on the flagship pod, Blake and I did, but we can cover him in brief here as well. Tim Stützle, just 1 assist in the last 5, 19 minutes average time on ice. The underlying numbers are pretty bad, and it does, I mean, I don't think that Brady Tkachuk being out is really the reason here. The 22 goal, 77 point pace for Stützle is definitely not what people had for him on this season. And I think it's just a tough spot. The underlying numbers being so bad gives me more pause. Like, I think he will score at a 75 point pace for the last few games of the season here, but also, it's not inspiring when you're staring down the barrel of your finals here, and you really need Stützle to be doing stuff for you based on where you drafted him. I will say Ottawa plays Columbus, Montreal, and Philadelphia this week. If there are any teams that they should be able to score some goals against, and those would be the teams. So definitely not dropping him or anything crazy like that yet. Jordan says, just wanted to thank you and Blake for all the help and content throughout the season. Second year following the channel. Definitely the best fantasy hockey content out there. Appreciate you for that. Was only able to secure third place, but had my best regular season at 19-2. Looking forward to next season and the off-season content. definitely stay tuned. We're going to be pumping out off-season content, basically right away as soon as the season is finished here. We're excited about it. We love digging back into the season that was and trying to extract what lessons we should be learning for next year, so that we get those while the season is still fresh in our mind. Sometimes when we only come back to it, well after the season, like basically in August or September when we're getting ready for the next NHL season and the next fantasy season, we do tend to not remember things very well, how the season went. Like even now, like, can you think back to where we were in November and October and how we were evaluating the players back then? We were still talking about Nikolai Kovalenko in the top 6 in Colorado at that point. It seems like eons ago at this point. So definitely there's off-season content to come that will hopefully get a firm foundation set for us for the off-season. And as we move through that, we'll definitely have more for you. So lastly here, basically there is a question in the Discord about goaltenders, and can we just kind of talk through them? This particular player, or this particular manager, I should say, in the Discord was talking about just having general goaltender talk about Week 25 championships. They grabbed Vejmelka during the bye week, now rostering him, Sorokin, Swayman, and Demko, with Stuart Skinner on IR+. Who should I drop for more skater spots? Only 2 goalie spots per night in this league, so I'd be wasting someone on the bench Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Tuesday. So definitely, you don't need to be rostering 4 goaltenders in a 2 goalie start league. 3 is definitely the max. So we'll look at Utah, the Islanders, Boston, and Vancouver here. Obviously, it's tough to roster anybody from Boston right now. The schedule there is not great. They only have 4 games left, and they're all on heavy nights here. And Swayman has not been good, to put it lightly. So Swayman is definitely towards the top of the list for drops in my mind. Utah goes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday here as well. And then they come back the following week for a couple more games. The Islanders, what do the Islanders have this week? They go, same thing, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. And then, what was the last one? Who did I miss? I missed one of them. It was Demko, right? Vancouver. They are also Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and against playoff teams here as well, Dallas, Colorado, and Minnesota. So tough look for Demko this week as well. Vancouver in tough to make the playoffs at this point. They are, what's the standings at now? They are 8 points back of Minnesota with 1 game in hand. That's going to be a tough road to hoe for them for sure. Vancouver's ahead of them Calgary rather is ahead of them as well. So overall, it's hard to trust anybody on Boston. Boston only has 4 total games, so you're not probably missing out on a lot there. Would not shock me if, Korpisalo gets 2 out of the 4 either, and so maybe you're benching Swayman. Maybe he's not even starting a couple of those games, and the games where you want him to be starting based on your when your other teams are playing. So that's the tough part with Boston for sure. Maybe you hold them through Tuesday, Thursday. I think honestly I would drop Swayman. I think I would just drop Swayman, rock with the other 3. And honestly, if I got to a spot where they're all starting on one night, I would continue on and I would drop Demko as well. I would not feel too bad about that, to be very honest with you. I don't think you need to be hanging on to a whole ton of goaltenders there. Looking at just the general goaltender situation across leagues, if we can look at the lower rostered goaltenders, obviously it's going to depend on what type of league you're in as well. If you're looking for volume, if you're looking for a little bit more on the rate stats side, Cam Talbot has been playing every game for Detroit and playing extremely well. He's already confirmed for Tuesday here against Montreal. Detroit obviously has to basically win out at this point to do anything. Actually, I don't even know if that's possible anymore. Where are they at? They are 6 points back. Yeah, they're still within it for sure. 6 points back. Huge game against Montreal. Talbot's getting the start there, and he's been great as of late, so you might want to try to ride the flames with a guy like Cam Talbot if he's available. Vejmelka has been terrific. You know that he's basically going to start every game, so there's that. Dostal is getting a lot of these starts because Gibson is hurt. Surprise, surprise, yet again. A bit tougher road to hoe for Dostal, Edmonton, Calgary, LA, Colorado are the next 4 games for Anaheim, so maybe that factors in for you as well. Then you're getting into the real tough decisions to make. The Elvis Merzlikins, the Spencer Knight, the Tristan Jarry. Yeah, Samuel Urson gets really, really dicey the further down you go. So, of the really lowly rostered players, honestly, I might go with Spencer Knight. He's playing against Pittsburgh and against Boston in the next couple of games. I might just go with Spencer Knight. I don't know. I don't trust Merzlikins at all. He's been pretty terrible over the last little bit. And Jarry, obviously, it's Tristan Jarry. How can you really trust him? I mean, that being said, Pittsburgh plays Chicago, New Jersey, Boston next 3 games. That's not the worst, but a little bit spread out there in terms of when those games are played. So Knight and Jarry, I guess, are a little bit tied, but definitely behind Talbot and Vejmelka and Dostal for me as goaltender options that are widely available at the moment. All right, we've finished the list. Back to the comments to close things out here. Richard asks, who would you rather keep for 1 season? Kadri, Gunther, Konechny, Bangers Cats with face-off wins. I think Gunther has big-time upside, but I think Konechny is just very bankable. I guess the only question you might have is if a coach comes in there that tries to spread the wealth a little bit and reduces Konechny's minutes, because Konechny is a bit more of a volume guy, like collects a lot of minutes and collects his points by virtue of being on the ice all the time rather than by terrific rate stats. So that could enter into it, but for me it's Konechny, then Gunther, then Kadri. Chris Hollywood, what do you think of Duchesne having an 80-point season this year and protecting his last point? Yeah, Duchesne has had an unbelievable season this year. I don't think even Matt Duchesne saw this season coming for himself. Quite honestly, 20% shooting percentage, 76% IPV, 14% on ice shooting percentage. Yeah, to be quite honest with you, while it's not something you would have really predicted, it is something that Duchesne has in the wheelhouse. He's a great player on a terrific team. And he is definitely this kind of player who has these kinds of popped off seasons. You think of the season he had in Nashville, and then he went quiet again. Does this mean that I'm going to draft Duchesne as an 80-point player once again next year? Absolutely not, because he did have to be very efficient to get to this number. Could he get to this number again next year if he stays in Dallas? His contract is up. He had a 1-year, $3 million deal this year. Could he be there once again? Yes, he absolutely could. Will I be drafting him as such? Absolutely not. WMW Animations, thanks for all the help this season. Had a good run, had a blast watching these. Excited for summer content. Appreciate you. Pucks and Grooves says Dustin Wolf was fantastic this year. Absolutely. Maybe a little bit of a fade here in the last little stretch, but yeah, carried that team in Calgary for much of the year. All right. I think we made it all the way through everything here. I think that's going to be all that I've got for this episode. So hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.